Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in this evening for our online Bible study. Let's get into it. I welcome you. If you are new to this study, I'm Pastor Dave St. Aubin. It's a joy to be with you here this evening. Tonight, we are looking at the book of Ezekiel, chapter 26. So I invite you to grab your Bibles, open them up to Ezekiel 26, grab something to take some good notes with, grab a beverage, and grab a snack, and let's get into it. Well, again, good evening and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. I do pray that your day's been going well. Pray that your week has been going well so far, and welcome to another night of study as we continue our journey through the Bible one chapter at a time, and we are now in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 26, and we are in this next section of the book of Ezekiel between chapters 4 through 24, which focus on the coming judgment, and 33 through 48, which focus on the coming restoration. And sandwiched in between those two sections are chapters 25 through 32, which focus on this judgment against the nations. And we looked at several of those last night. The Edomites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Philistines. Tonight we're going to look at this judgment on the city-state, the nation of Tyre. And this is a long oracle against this nation, chapter 26 tonight, 27 tomorrow, and then chapter 28 when we resume after our Thanksgiving break. So it's very long. When Jerusalem finally fell in 586 BC, the only states that were still resisting the Babylonians were the Egyptians and Tyre. The Tyrians. And so it's not coincidental that of all the foreign nations addressed by Ezekiel, these two, Egypt and Tyre, are singled out for the brunt of these volleys of oracles that come against these nations. The length of this oracle, 3 chapters, it really reflects this great significance of Tyre at this point in time in Israel's history. Now that word Tyre, Tyre, it means rock. This was the principal city of Phoenicia, and it really consisted mainly of 2 big cities, 2 big towns. There was a fortified stronghold that was on this rocky outcropping about a half a mile offshore in the Mediterranean Sea, and then there was a smaller community on the Mediterranean coastline of the land that was opposite of this island town. Eventually, a causeway was built by one of their kings to join these two. But this was Tyre. It was this small, heavily fortified island off the coast, and then this city that was on the coast. Those were the 2 strongholds in this city-state. And Tyre was important because it was a major port. It had a location in the Mediterranean and another location on the coastline of the Mediterranean. And so it was a commercial center and it was a military center. It was about 30 miles from the Sea of Galilee, about 100 miles from Jerusalem. Chapter 25 that we looked at last night contains prophecies against the nations to the east and the west of Israel, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Philistines. Now God is looking north, this nation state that lies to the north of Judah. And Ezekiel's prophecies of Tyre and the destruction of Tyre are among the longest in the Old Testament. Other prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah and Amos and Zechariah, prophesied against Tyre, but not as long as Ezekiel is going to do here over these next 3 chapters. And Ezekiel is going to name, God is using Nebuchadnezzar to punish all the enemies of Israel, of which Tyre and Egypt are included. And that's really what we're going to look at over these next several chapters, this week and next week. And Egypt and Tyre were especially strong. They were formidable. Now, biblical record back to Joshua chapter 19 first mentions this city, Tyre, as being a strong, fortified town that formed part of the boundary of the inheritance of the tribe of Asher. Tyre was prominent in the days of David and the days of Solomon, and throughout the remainder of Old Testament history up until the time where God was going to judge them. When Assyria rose to power, Tyre would periodically submit to Assyria's power. They would pay tribute out of the abundance of their wealth. But whenever the opportunity arose, Tyre would rebel against the Assyrians. And as the Assyrians began to decrease in their strength, Tyre would exert their complete independence from that nation, and they became very strong and powerful. They controlled the waterways. Judah controlled much of the land routes, and so for the Tyrians to come in and eliminate the Judites would have given them domination on the coastline, on the waterways, and the land routes. So this is a very significant prophecy lifted up here, and there's four major parts that make up this section, chapters 26 through 28. We're going to see alternating back and forth between these prophetic speeches and these laments. Tonight, we'll see this prophetic speech. Tomorrow, chapter 27, we'll see a lament. So a lot to look at. Not a long chapter, but a lot of information here. So let's get right into it. Open up your Bible to Ezekiel 26. If you don't have a Bible with you, not a problem as always. All the verses are up here on the screen. You can follow along, take some good notes. We'll start with this general prophecy of this coming destruction of Tyre, verses 1 through 6. And God is going to threaten Tyre with this destruction, which would come by a host of other nations. So verse 1, in the 11th month of the 12th year, on the first day of the month, and again, I've mentioned throughout this study, whenever you see mention of a specific date line, it indicates a new section of Scripture being offered. So in this time, the word of the Lord came to me, Ezekiel. So this oracle concerning Tyre comes to Ezekiel on the first of the 11th month of the 12th year of their captivity, which dates this somewhere in mid-April 587, 586 BC. And here is the prophecy. Son of man, because Tyre has said of Jerusalem, aha, the gate of the nations is broken, and its doors have swung open to me, the Tyrians. Now that she lies in ruins, I will finally prosper. So this divine judgment is going to come on Tyre because they rejoiced, like the others, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Philistines, they rejoiced at Jerusalem's destruction. Because of that, God would judge them. According to other Old Testament prophets, which we'll see in the book of Joel and we'll see in the book of Amos, the people of Tyre had sold many of the Israelites of Judah, sold them as slaves to the Edomites and to the Greeks. They viewed this destruction of Jerusalem, as I mentioned, this is an opportunity to advance their own interests. The Judeans were economic rivals, not so much military enemies, but they were economic rivals. And so if they, the Tyrians, could control the sea and the land, which the people of Judah controlled the land routes, if they could control all of that, that would enable them to impose tolls on travelers. They would obtain more revenue. They would have economic power in this area. And now that Jerusalem has ceased to exist, Tyre was going to jump on this opportunity. And so with the Babylonians destroying Jerusalem, this has opened up this gateway, right? Because you have said the gate is broken and the doors have swung open, I'm going to come in. This oracle against Tyre that we're going to see, it's distinctly different from the other oracles against the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Edomites, the Philistines that we saw. Uh, it was very different. These other nations that surrounded Israel, Moab and Edom and the Philistines and Sidon, which we will see after we look at Tyre and Egypt, they set themselves up in opposition to God's people. Tyre thought that they were a substitute for God's people, and they were going to come in and take their place. Verse 3. So therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Tyre, and I will bring many nations against you, like the sea casting up its waves, and they will destroy the walls of Tyre. They will pull down her towers. I will scrape away her rubble. I will make her a bare rock. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. God was going to set himself against Tyre and would bring many nations against them. Just like waves crashing against the shore, these enemy nations would come against the Tyrians. And this was a very apt description because, again, Tyre had two locations. One, this rocky outpost in the Mediterranean Sea, the other on the Mediterranean coastline on the land. So these waves would come crashing in around them. These nations would destroy these fortifications, and they would eventually scrape this site clean as a bare rock. This is wordplay in Hebrew, and I'm not going to go into the translation, but Hebrew is a very unique language in how it's written. This is not just text. This is a wordplay that the rock is going to be reduced to a rock. Verse 5. So first, this outpost in the Mediterranean, out in the sea, she will become a place to spread fish nets. For I have spoken, declares the Lord. So fishermen would one day use this outpost in the Mediterranean as a place to spread their nets dry. This picture presents that the debris of the mainland, the city on the coastline, would be pushed out into the sea to the point of this rocky outpost, and it would all become level, just a flat surface. Next verse, she will become plunder for the nations. Tyre would become a spoil for these enemy nations that would attack them. Formerly, Tyre had spoiled the nations by taking their money. They had plundered these other nations. Now they would be the ones being plundered. Verse 6, and her settlements on the mainland will be ravaged by the sword. So not only will this outpost in the Mediterranean be laid flat and leveled, these dependent villages on the mainland were also going to be destroyed. They would fall in battle, and then they will know that I am the Lord. So the fulfillment of this prophecy was going to convince the people of Tyre that God is the only true God. Interesting side note, in the three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus ministered in this area. We'll get to that when we get to the New Testament. But here's the judgment against Tyre. Your two strongholds out in the Mediterranean and on the coastline, they're going to be leveled flat. Nothing will remain. These waves would come crashing in. So verses 7 through 14 present the first wave. Verse 7, this is what the sovereign Lord says. From the north, so here comes the first crashing wave. I'm going to bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar. So for the first time here, Ezekiel names the enemy. The king of Babylon, the king of kings, with horses and chariots and horsemen and a great army. This destruction is going to begin from the Babylonians coming in from the north. And again, this is the first time Ezekiel identifies the agent of God's coming judgment on Tyre by name, Nebuchadnezzar, as a king of kings. Now, he's a king of kings in the sense that there were many other kings that were subject to him, nations that Babylon had conquered, but Nebuchadnezzar had left these puppet kings in place that would report to him. So he was the king of all these kings. This is just the first wave of this conquest that's going to come crashing in. God's going to describe this more fully when we get to these later waves. So the first wave, Nebuchadnezzar, verse 8, he will ravage your settlements on the mainland with the sword. All these little outposts on the coastline, he will set up a siege against you. He will build up siege ramps to your walls. He will raise his shields against you. He will direct the blows of his battering rams against your walls. He will demolish your towers. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come against these smaller cities on the mainland with a great army to besiege these cities, to break down their walls and kill many of the people inside. After defeating Jerusalem in 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar then proceeds to the north and attacks Tyre and attacks all these neighboring towns for 13 years, beginning in 586 BC. Verse 10, his horses, Nebuchadnezzar's army, his cavalry will be so many that they will cover you with their dust. Your walls will tremble at the noise of the war horses, the wagons, and the chariots when he enters your gates, as men enter a city whose walls have been broken through. Nebuchadnezzar's many horses would raise so much dust in this advancing attack and cause this loud commotion as they breached the walls and as they entered the city and as they trampled the streets of the mainland town. Verse 11, that the hooves will trample all your streets. He will kill your people with the sword, and your strong pillars will all fall. Many people will die. These strong pillars of Tyre's major cities would fall. Their defenses would fall. The pillars have double meaning. They refer to the leaders within the town, the pillars of strength, and they refer to these prominent pillars in the temple that were in the main city, and they refer to the defense towers. It's all coming down. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed mainland Tyre. First, he didn't completely destroy the island stronghold out in the Mediterranean, but there's other historical evidence that about 10 years later, that the island stronghold surrendered to Nebuchadnezzar as well, around 573 BC. Verse 12, the Babylonians, will plunder your wealth. They will loot your merchandise. They will break down your walls. They will demolish your fine houses. They will throw your stones, your timber, your rubble, all into the sea. This is that reference back to this being laid flat. These enemies would take so much spoil from the city, and they would push the remnants of the rock, the timber, just push it all out into the Mediterranean. This would all come to be accomplished when Alexander the Great would use this rubble from the mainland town and would make this causeway that would provide access to this fortress out in the peninsula. So this was all going to come to pass. Verse 13, I will put an end to your noisy songs and the music of your harps. They will be heard no more. I will make you a bare rock, and you will become a place to spread fish nets. God would silence the singing in Tyre. And he would turn this site into a bare rock that the only suitable purpose was for fishermen to lie out their fish nets flat so that they would dry in the sun. You will never be rebuilt, for I, the Lord, have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. The city would not be rebuilt on that site again, which was very unusual for this time period in history. Even in Jerusalem, it's built up upon itself over and over and over time. What we see today is just something that's been built on top of something else that was built on top of something else. For Tyre, that was not going to happen. Now, shall never be rebuilt is better translated as will never be built up again. In other words, it will never go back to its former state of glory. It doesn't imply that there will never be any buildings in this location again, because again, Jesus ministered in these areas. What it means is your former glory, it will never return. It is gone, demolished. Verse 15. Now, verses 15 through 18 focus on the impression that this destruction of Tyre was going to leave on other people. So, verse 15, this is what the sovereign Lord says to Tyre. Will not the coastlands tremble at the sound of your fall? When the wounded groan and the slaughter takes place in you, so God's revealing that these other towns, when they hear of Tyre's overthrow, they would tremble. They would moan in fear. These were all vassal states of Tyre that they had conquered along the coastline and among these little islands that were out in the Mediterranean that all depended on Tyre for protection. Now that Tyre has been leveled, they're all going to tremble. Who's going to protect us now? Verse 16, then all the princes of the coast will step down from their thrones. They'll surrender. They'll lay aside their robes. They will take off their embroidered garments, and they will be clothed with terror, and they will sit trembling on the ground, appalled at you. All these little colonies on the coastline, and these little colonies out in the Mediterranean, Cyprus and Rhodes and Malta and Sicily, and along the coastline of Africa and the Mediterranean, these were all little vassal areas of Tyre. The rulers of these communities, when they heard of Tyre's fall, they would go into mourning. They would tremble with fear because Babylon had taken over their mother city. They would surrender their thrones. They would submit to these invaders, the Babylonians. They would lament the fate of Tyre. They would bemoan the destruction of this mighty power, and they would acknowledge their own fear when this mother state, Tyre, falls. Verse 17, and then they will take up a lament concerning you. And they will say, how is it you are destroyed, you city of renown? You people by the men of the sea, how is it you are gone? You were a power on the seas, you and your citizens, and you put your terror on everyone who lived there. And now the coastlines tremble on the day of your fall. And the islands in the sea, again, Sardinia, Malta, Sicily, Cyprus, Crete, they all are terrified because of your collapse. This is a lament. It's a very brief lament. But again, it's very characteristic of what we saw in earlier chapters of Ezekiel. This is like a funeral song. It's a deep mourning. When the people of Tyre, going back to verse 2 of this chapter, when they rejoiced over Jerusalem's fall, God said he was going to judge them. Now Tyre has fallen. And these vassal states of Tyre, they are demonstrating more wisdom, because rather than them rejoicing over the fall of Tyre, they are lamenting because they know that they too, because of their treatment of Israel, are going to be judged. When Jerusalem was destroyed, this holy city, there were no lamentations for it. If we go back to Lamentations chapter 1, there was no lament by those who passed by it. There was no great lamenting over Jerusalem's fall. We see that in the book of Lamentations. But when Tyre falls, there is this universal bemoaning and wailing and lamenting over their demise. Verse 19. This is what the sovereign Lord says. When I make you a desolate cities, like cities no longer inhabited, and when I bring the ocean depths over you and its vast waters cover you, this all refers to this laying flat in the sea, then I will bring you down with those who go down into the pit, to the people of long ago, and I will make you dwell in the earth below. We'll talk about this here in a second. As in ancient ruins, with those who go down into the pit, and you will not return, You will not take your place in the land of the living. God is further promising, not only will I destroy you, after I destroy you with these great waves of invaders, it will be as if you are dead among the dead. You will go down to Sheol. You will go down to the pit. You will lose your glory. This is an image of this island fortress submerging beneath this sea of invaders that were going to bury it. And Ezekiel is mixing two metaphors here for their destruction. Waves that would overwhelm the rocky seaside outpost in the Mediterranean, and the people on the land going into the pit, going into the grave, going into Sheol. Verse 21, and I will bring you to a horrible end, and you will be no more. You will be sought, people will look for you, but you will never again be found, declares the sovereign Lord. Terror would overtake the people. The city would exist no longer. Others would try to find it, but to no avail. It would be gone. They would search for the city on this former site, but all they were going to discover is that it was completely gone. Today, in this area, all that remains is just a small fishing village. And what it is primarily used for on this site is for the fishermen to lay out their fishing nets on the rock to dry. It's everything God had foretold through Ezekiel. And again, not that there would be no more a Tyre, but it would be no more the Tyre that they once were. Their old glory, their fame, it was gone forever. It would never return. And as that particular Tyre in history, that prophecy has been fulfilled. There is nothing left of their glory days. The God who is chosen, what is weak in the world, also shames the strong, the prideful, by evidence of his power, so that no human, so that no man may boast of their deeds in the presence of the Lord's. It is only by grace through faith that we are saved. For the Tyrians, it was all based on what they thought they could do, taking advantage of this fallen Jerusalem, and God punished them, and that prophecy has been fulfilled. There is no more Tyre of their old glory. And that is Ezekiel chapter 26. And I pray that that has been a help to you. Tomorrow we'll wrap up the week. We'll look at Ezekiel chapter 7, which continues on this prophecy against Tyre. But now we will look at this deeper lament on what has taken place. So thank you for being here. Again, I do pray that this has been a help. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Till then, take care and God bless. Bye-bye.